What is Sherrod Brown doing in Ohio?
Well, you got to remember, in my case, Sherrod Brown ran for office for the first time when Richard Nixon was in the White House. And this guy's been there a long time. 30 years in D.C., 20 years in state government. He's the grim reaper of manufacturing in Ohio. We've lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs while he's been in D.C. He's been in lockstep with the radical left. This is a guy who wanted to be Kamala Harris's vice president in 2019. She campaigned with him here in Ohio in 2018. He lied about skipping the Democratic convention, saying he often misses them, when in reality he hasn't missed one since 1994. And the reason he lies about those things is because the only tool they've got in their toolbox is to lie. Because if the American people and the voters of Ohio actually knew their extreme voting record, they would never have a chance of being elected. So they lie.
Just yesterday, the Prime Minister of Canada, Trudeau, signed off on a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. And this is exactly what Donald Trump was talking about when he used the word bloodbath. If the Chinese companies can make these electric cars in Mexico and dump them here in California, in America, with for $12,000, then it would be a bloodbath for the American automobile manufacturing sector of the economy. That's exactly what he was talking about, and that's exactly what Trudeau just did yesterday. Even though everyone's yelling at Trump for doing the same. What do you make? And there's a couple questions there. It's about electric vehicles. It's about tariffs. It's also about China. You can pick one of the three.
Well, let's talk about electric vehicles, because that was the business I was in. As you know, I started with one tiny little car dealership, built a network of 15 car dealerships all over the country. One of the largest dealer groups in America. Look, customers are the best to decide what kind of car they should buy for themselves. It sounds kind of an insane thing to even have to debate, honestly, given that we live in the United States of America and not in communist China. But let the markets dictate the pace of innovation. People today are rejecting electric cars. They're not buying them despite massive incentives, despite raising the cost of internal combustion engine cars. People still want what they want. Now, over time, taste may change, technology may evolve, but the idea that the government is going to incentivize, or in the case of Kamala Harris and Sherrod Brown, mandate that you buy an electric vehicle, it is complete and utter lunacy. Unfortunately, a lot of the car company CEOs are going along with it, with one exception, which is Toyota. Toyota is actually the one car company that's standing up and saying this won't work. It's not sustainable. It's not doable. It's not what consumers want. And they're going hard into hybrids, and I think they're going to end up getting rewarded as a result.
Nice. The second part of that is manufacturing in Ohio, as you spoke of a minute ago, the grim reaper of manufacturing. Can you give us some data or some perspective on where Ohio is right now versus where it used to be and where you think it can be?
Well, I'll give you a stat that will blow your mind. In 1949, 6 of the wealthiest 14 cities in the United States of America were in Ohio. Toledo, Youngstown, Dayton. Oh, yeah. This is a thriving manufacturing state for 2 reasons. Number one, we were Texas before Texas was Texas. We were an energy-dominant state. Remember, Standard Oil of Ohio started here, and we have to bring that back. We are sitting on enormous natural gas reserves. We should be an energy-dominant nation that allows us to bring manufacturing back. You're not going to build a manufacturing facility because you have 2 windmills out front. We're certainly not going to do it with solar panels where, we have maybe 100 days of sunshine here in Ohio. So you need natural gas, you need coal, you need oil, you need nuclear. So we have to be energy dominant. That's number one. And secondly, you need a regulatory and tax environment that encourages businesses to do business here in Ohio, as opposed to what Sherrod Brown does, which is all he does is advocate for union bosses. So, of course, they fund his campaign. He funds them. You have this cycle of corruption, and these companies leave. They go to places like Alabama. They go to places like Mississippi, Georgia. And the reality is what we'll do is we're going to woo companies here to Ohio, make certain that they understand how easy it is to do business here. We're going to work well with the Republican legislature and the Republican governor to attract businesses. Sherrod Brown repels them.
That's amazing. It's just so everyone knows, Bernie and his team and we have no communication beforehand about what to ask or what to talk about. Or there's no like pre-interview, and it's not like, hey, ask about this so that I can share this fact about Ohio. There's none of that. I had no idea what the answer was going to be. I just knew you probably have some interesting fact about Ohio manufacturing. In 1949, 6 of the wealthiest 14 cities were in Ohio. That is astounding.
Yeah, now
it's absolutely astounding.
And what's even more astounding is now we're barely in the top 50. But you know where the wealthiest cities in America are today?
Whoa.
Washington, D.C. What do they make there other than corruption and a place that absolutely pillages this nation? And that, unfortunately, has been bipartisan. You know, the idea that Washington, D.C. would have the wealthiest cities in the United States is disgusting. We got to shrink the size of the federal government massively, move things back to states where it belongs, get these agencies out of D.C., so you don't have this cycle of corruption that goes on there. Our founders, if they realized what was going on in Washington, D.C. today, they'd absolutely roll over in their graves. This is exactly what they feared. If you read the Federalist Papers, especially Madison, was deeply concerned about a government this size. And it's just unsustainable. We cannot afford the federal government we have today.
Okay, so JD Vance is the other senator in Ohio. And there's been a really, really fascinating attack line against JD that he went to Yale. And Walz just random, like he brings it up in all of his stump speeches, but it was such a weird random line out of nowhere. There's no beginning or end to it. It was just like out there that he went to Yale and he's betrayed his people. And the governor of Kentucky, he's also made the same deal that JD Vance he attacked Ohio and Kentucky Appalachian folk. He's betrayed them. He's demeaned them. He's not one of them. He's a Yale guy instead. What do you make of all that attack against JD?
Well, first of all, Governor Beshear was born with the entire silver cutlery set in his mouth, not just a spoon, okay? This is a guy who inherited everything he's got, including his job as governor from his father. This guy earned absolutely nothing. He probably has never been to Eastern Kentucky. He probably makes fun of those people at his fancy cocktail parties in Louisville. Look, JD grew up poor. The circumstances of his birth were not ideal. In fact, I think the deck was stacked against him. The fact that he even got to the level of success he's gotten is something that's uniquely American. What they forget, before he went to Yale, he went and served our country. He went to Ohio State University. He went to Yale on a scholarship while also working. Watch the movie. You see, he made a movie and wrote a book about his upbringing. It's absolutely remarkable American story. What's ironic is that my opponent, on the other hand, Sherrod Brown, who grew up extraordinarily wealthy, was a full-pay student at Yale, majored in Russian studies, and then went into elected office, never served the country, never had a job, has never had to go out and depend on his own work, but instead got a government paycheck. So it's interesting that Tim Walz besmirches JD going to Yale Law School after serving our country and after going to Ohio State is actually a direct shot at Sherrod Brown, because what he's talking about is Sherrod Brown leaving Ohio to go with the elites in Yale and always forgetting them, because let's be honest, Sherrod Brown spends much more time with Hollywood celebrities and San Francisco liberals and people over in Martha's Vineyard that decide, how the little people should live. That's who Sherrod Brown really is. The difference is that Sherrod Brown takes his suit, gets it all wet, puts it into a dryer, makes it look like it doesn't fit him, uses his wife's blow dryer to mess up his hair, gravels up his voice, and pretends he's a working-class Ohioan. It's totally fake.
How can people support Bernie Moreno and perhaps people live nearby Ohio? Even though pretty much, Indiana, maybe it's people in Indiana where it's more of a lock and they can just zip over the border and help you out. Maybe people in West Virginia can come over and help you out. Pennsylvania should stay in Pennsylvania, help out Pennsylvania. Michigan should help in Michigan. But how can people help out your campaign?
Well, they can go on Bernie Moreno, Moreno.com, throw in $5, $20, $50, whatever you can do. Look, Sherrod Brown's going to have all the support from big tech, all the support from Wall Street, all the San Francisco liberal elites that, of course, are the ones that are going to destroy this country. We cannot allow this country to become like Venezuela. As somebody who's born in Colombia next door, please, Americans, do not let this country become like Venezuela. That's what Kamala Harris And that's what Sherrod Brown want to do. Do not let them do that. Let's restore and fight for this country.